Welcome to the Very Merry Life podcast, unfiltered, unscripted, and always relatable as fuck. I'm your host, Mary Hendricks, and you might know me from Instagram as That Relatable AF Mama, who hopefully feels like an old friend at this point. And if not, hang tight and join in as things get real, honest, and probably a bit too TMI as I, and the help of some amazing guests, dive into all things mom life, marriage, sex, and more. No experts, just real life moms talking real life things. So get ready to laugh lots, cry occasionally, and leave feeling seen, supported, and inspired. Making friends is hard enough as an adult, let alone as a mom, but all of that changes right here and now. So hang on, lean in, virtually clink whatever glass you have nearby with mine, and let's go. Hi, hello. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Very Merry podcast. So today, as you saw the title of this podcast, we are going to be talking developmental delays. If you aren't aware, my daughter Cassidy, my oldest, has a speech delay. It was diagnosed before the age of 2, and it's something that we've been navigating for over 3 years now. And I wanted to bring on another mom who you will meet in a second, Carly, because she is also navigating the same with her first. And it's not something that we often talk about. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I think it's a big pride thing. I think it's a big denial thing. I think it's a big embarrassment thing. It's a big comparison thing. I think it's just a lot. It's a lot. And just like everything else, it's nothing to feel alone in. And that's what we're going to talk. That's what we're going to do today. So no light at the end of the tunnel. I can tell you that right there and then, because we are still in the thick of it. We are still figuring it all out, but who cares? Who cares? I don't think everything you listen to, everything that you explore needs to have an answer. Sometimes that answer can just be knowing that people are doing the same, living the same, and that should be enough. So 3, 2, 1, let's get into it. Hi, Carly.
Hi.
Hello. All right. So I'm here obviously with my friend Carly, and I'm calling her my friend. I call everyone my friend, but she literally is my Instagram BFF. Our lives have been crazy these past couple of months. So we've been doing our own thing, but she is one of my first and consistent Instagram friends, and that we finally met in person this past summer. And we usually, I mean, again, life has been crazy, but usually we've talked as much as possible, like daily. And it's
some of my friends will ask, like, is Mary real? I'm like, yeah, she's real. And it's kind of crazy. I talk to you actually sometimes more than people that I've been friends with, my whole life. So that's
like the nice thing. Sometimes you just meet people, especially because I think what's nice when you meet certain people, especially you and I, like, we don't live nearby. We don't hang out. Like, we can't do any of those things. Mm-hmm. There's like it's like kind of opening up to your salon, like your hairstylist. Do you ever do that?
Yeah.
It's like, because you don't have a history, it's very easy to just open up and talk.
And just put it all out there.
Yeah. So, definitely. But I wanted Carly to come on just because her and I, we relate on a lot of things. We relate on a lot of things, but Carly and I also do things incredibly differently at the same time too. There are certain differences that Carly and I do, but I love that. Every mom does her own thing, and it's just about finding what works for you. But the one reason why I wanted Carly to come on and talk to me was because we both have experience with having children with a developmental delay, or a speech delay, whatever. I know all of that stuff varies. And I wanted to make an episode to talk about that because even just now on Instagram, I did like a question thing for all you guys listening. I did ask a question if you wanted to. And someone said, can you open up more about Cassidy, my daughter's speech delay? And I said, just stay tuned. I want to record this episode, answer whatever questions you have, because it's a interesting process. There's a lot of learning curves with it. I'm still learning with it. But it's also like a really personal, experience as well. Like, it's a really personal parenting experience as well, because there's a lot of emotions and feelings and thoughts that come with it. And it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not. And honestly, I didn't realize until early on in our journey that there's kind of this stigma about having a child with a developmental delay. And the reason why I discovered it was when I started opening up about it, people had reached out to me with words similarly to, how are you holding up? How do you feel about that? And I was like, I feel, we can swear on this, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Like, I feel fucking fine. Like, why, like, what do you mean? And I started to realize that maybe this isn't the case with everybody, but there was this kind of stigma of, if my child isn't doing what they're supposed to do, that's a reflection of my parenting.
Yep.
And I've learned that that's, now that I have 2 children and can compare, even though you're not supposed to compare, I know that, my son is so much different than my daughter.
Yeah.
And honestly, I probably pay less attention to my son because he's the second child.
Yeah.
So to, I don't know, give a little bit of a background about Giada, my daughter. She is going to be 3 next month at the time of this recording. And all of her milestones, for the most part, were delayed. The first like significant delay was crawling. She didn't end up crawling until a few weeks before her first birthday, which I had heard isn't incredibly concerning because some kids just go like right from crawling to walking. So that's kind of what we assumed would happen is, you know, she'd crawl for a month or 2 and then immediately go into walking. Then she started crawling right around when she was 1, and then really wasn't doing a lot of the things physically that she was supposed to be able to do at that point. We got her into physical therapy, really tried. Even with the best efforts, she didn't end up walking independently until 22 months. So she was almost 2. Now, if you fast forward a year later, she still does not have any like true words. She's trying to say them now, which is a huge improvement, but she doesn't talk. You know, she wants to, but she doesn't know how to use spoken word quite yet. And that's been a challenge.
Yeah.
As you know, with Cassidy. So we're still in the thick of it. So there's not like a happy ending to this yet. We're getting there. But the happy ending is that we know that she's gonna get there eventually. Because she ended up hitting all of her milestones just a lot later than we thought she would. So
we'll be back after a quick break. Eye-Opening Moments podcasts are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcasts.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing. And again, for, you know, this podcast, I always said, I don't necessarily want like an expert coming on and giving me like tangible things with these scenarios. I'm sure it would be incredibly helpful. All of us can get on Google and we can find experts weighing in on these things, but it's very rare to get a parent's, you know, look into it. And a very unfiltered, like this is why it's called unfiltered, like an unfiltered, raw, whatever you feel about it. It's just, there are a slew of emotions, like I said. And I know for me with Cassidy, Cassidy was good with fine motor skills. She always had her fine motor skills and she got those early, where those were the things that came first. But I noticed with Cassidy, right before, probably around 18 months, I started noticing that she was saying like, she said like dada, mama. I think that was it. Like, but I know by the time, I know it was noticeable that she didn't have, I don't know what the guideline is for two. Like, I want to look
I
it
know
up.
for 3, you're supposed to have like,
I don't even want to look it up now because didn't they switch
it's
them
like
over?
500 something words for this age for Giada. And I'm like, what? Do I even know 500 words? Like,
Let's see. How many words should a 2-year-old have? They switched them though. I know the CDC or some shit.
well, so I think let's talk about that because that is at first when the CDC changed that, I don't want to say I got excited, but I felt like my daughter would be more within the average.
Yeah.
But what I ended up not finding out, it's not like I uncovered some conspiracy, but what I ended up realizing is that that's going to end up displacing services for kids that need it because of these new standards, if they're now within the norm. But
yeah, well, and a lot of it came out of like, I even talked to, I'm bringing Spencer, like I said, I'm bringing Spencer to this new nursery school, and we were standing outside waiting for the door to his classroom to open. And I had a parent, a mom and dad standing next to me with their son, and they were waiting, and she was saying something. She was saying how her son really is struggling with drop off and how he freaks out. And I said, I was like, it gets better. It gets easier. I said, it could be the opposite of my case where my kids don't really give a fuck.
they're like, bye, Mom.
Yeah. They don't even acknowledge me. And she was laughing and she said, yeah. And she's like, it's hard because my son is speech delayed. And then I immediately was like, my oldest is the same exact way. I understand that. And we got to talk and she said, it's the pandemic that really killed us. And I said, I know that too.
Mm-hmm.
I know that too.
Yeah.
Because and going into the whole CDC thing, switching it off. I mean, I know a lot of people and I can agree on it. I think they did it because they know kids are fucked.
Yeah.
The pandemic kids got fucked.
Yeah.
Hard.
Well,
And it's just easier to switch things and make it seem like it's not that big of a deal.
Right. Yep. Well, even my situation at home, like she definitely got screwed because I was and still am mostly working from home, which I'm incredibly grateful for, by the way. But my husband had his in-person job too. And in 2020, our daycare shut down. So I didn't even have the option, like many other parents out there. And then our daycare, when they did reopen, there was a limit on capacity and everything like that. And our daycare decided to prioritize like first responders, doctors. Totally fine with me. I'm not out there fighting this pandemic. I will stay right where I am. You can have a spot at daycare. You know what I mean? And but then we just continue to make it work. So make it work is a loose term, I guess. Like, yeah, the day-to-day making it work and, keeping her at home and stuff. But do you think I was sitting there educating her? No, I had her in front of a TV for 1.5 years because I'm working and
as did everyone.
Yeah. My job, like it was hard during COVID. I rescheduled like 300 weddings with like very limited help. So
no, I mean, and that's the thing is like everyone figured out what we could, but so Cassidy she turned 2 right before the pandemic hit, December 2019.
Yep.
She turned 2 and then pandemic hit and that was right. And we started speech therapy or speech service, early intervention and speech therapy. We started that right before the pandemic hit. And then the pandemic did, and they still continued services. I think they like went without a month. It was like that first month where everyone thought the world was about to end. Yeah. And then they resumed, but the woman came to our house with the mask on, which was totally fine. And then, I think she was doing that. And then it turned into phone. Or it was phone at first, and then she was coming. I don't really remember, but all I know is that for a while it was part phone, and then the other part was her in person. I can't remember what that was, but all I know is that both of them didn't do shit. It was for half an hour. And so she did that until she turned 3. And now that was 2020, December 2020, when she turned 3. And she went to go to the school. I remember, and the, public elementary schools, a lot of, depending on the state, most states have a continued services program. And we went and we got evaluated there, and they basically told us, she's not where she should be, but based off of the standardized test or whatever testing they did for her, she was a few points off, and they couldn't.
It's so frustrating.
I wanted to look at them and be like, hey, skew the numbers, man.
Yeah.
What are you doing? But I don't know if the pandemic had anything to do with that, but all we know is that we were told to put her into a preschool. So we found a preschool that we could, and in hopes that the socialization would help her and, push her forward in her speech development. And not only did that not happen, she regressed. So we recently have Cassidy in, as of this past May, we got her reevaluated from a private speech therapist who scored her, and she scored less than 10% in whatever she should be, both for receptive and expressive language. And the speech therapist just looked at me and she said, you take this, you go to your school and you put this on their desk, they're going to take her. And I was like, I hope you're right. And sure enough, they did. So that's my experience, but it sucks. I'm going to just flat out say it. It fucking sucks. All of this fucking sucks. I hate it. I hate having to explain to people.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm out and about, when she meets new kids, sometimes I can tell that kids look at her and can tell that they don't really know what she's saying. Yeah. And she can talk. Cassidy talks up a freaking storm, but she just, it's almost like you're talking to someone. It's interesting listening to Cassidy talk. You can, I'm so used to it that I can understand her train of thought.
Yeah.
You can tell. But if you listen to her, it's almost, this is going to sound terrible. If you ever, when someone has a brain injury and they're almost trying to talk, but the words get all mixed.
Yeah.
That's how she talks. That she's shooting for something. She knows what she's trying to say, but the words are popping
disjointed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We found Giada responds well to sign language, not anything crazy. It's not like she's, speaking every word in sign, but I think she's up to 20 signs now.
That counts.
It does. And I'm like, because what I didn't realize, and my husband and I learned through the process of speech therapy, is when we think of speech therapy, we think, okay, they're going to try to get her to talk. Yeah. And you're picturing, a therapist saying okay, say this, say that. And that's actually the last point of it. Yeah. Prior to that, as they want to know, is this a physical issue? Is there hearing loss? Is there something going on with their mouth? And then once they go through all of that, it's, okay, does she understand language? Yeah. Okay. Does she follow commands? Is she putting all of her mouth in her food and keeping it in there, meaning that, there could be a physical problem going on with the mouth muscles. Yeah. And that was really eye-opening for us because, my husband, a year ago, just kept saying to Giada, Giada, say this, say that. And she just, that was a year ago. She is just now understanding what we're
trying to ask of her.
Yeah. And we didn't realize that at the time, that there's all of these building blocks of speech before speech itself happens. And that was really eye-opening for us as new parents,
Yeah. Well, and that's the big thing. And I know when all of this shit was starting to go on, I remember Kevin and I had just a moment. I know Kev got really kind of upset about it. And I know sometimes he still does, where it just, I think it's sometimes it's just upsetting. And I remember talking about it for the first time and someone messaging me saying I'm so glad that you're talking about it. Like I have a sister-in-law or I have a whatever that won't go get their child evaluated because it's like a pride issue.
Yeah.
And I said, I get it. Like, I get it because you can't help at first. Like, I know I did everything I could. Like I was first time parent, but that doesn't matter. I was still talking to her all day. Like she was surrounded by people. She did everything you could, but you still can't help but wonder what you did.
Yeah.
Like, did I not talk to her enough or did I not explain things enough? Like I definitely learned through speech therapy, there are different ways to talk.
Yeah.
Like all of those things. And I don't know whether or not that's why Spencer knows so much now. Like, I don't know if that's what's helping the second child and whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
But
definitely with my son, like hyper aware of his development because of, our experience with Giada. I'm just kind of like, okay, like he's doing this, he's doing that. Ooh, he's going to be, well, here's the other part too, is my son was overdue. So only by a week, but I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, well, should he actually be doing more than what he's doing now? Because Giada was 38 weeks and he was 41 weeks. So I have more expectations for him developmentally.
yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, well, he cooked longer, Yeah. I'm like, you had more time in there. So you should be doing more.
It's weird. I mean, even with Spencer, and what's funny is like, but then you can compare and I'm like, okay, well, Spencer is a smart little cookie. Spencer just talks and talks and talks. He still doesn't have like he's not like clear sentences where like I hear some kids that talk really clear. Spencer's not that, but Spencer is a smart little cookie in words and he knows his ABCs and he can count by tens and he can count in Spanish now. I don't know
what.
Yes, I don't teach him any of this shit. Anyway, but he can do
Where
that.
did he learn that?
The tablet.
Yeah.
But he can do that stuff, but yet when it comes to like walking and things like that, he is still wobbly. Like I don't trust him for shit when it comes to like walking. No, like he's good, but you could watch him. Even my family says that, and you're like, you watch him and you could tell that he's not as sturdy on his feet. His motor skills are not as like strong. And yet Cassidy was the complete opposite. Cassidy was sturdy on her 2 feet. She could climb things. She could do all of that. But yet when it came to speech, like it wasn't happening. But
well, it almost makes you wonder, like if Cassidy didn't have these delays, would you even notice that with Spencer? You know what I mean?
Well, and even with Haley. So now we have Haley. When we went in, I was a month overdue for her 6 month. And we went in and the doctor's talking. She's like, is she babbling?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I mean, she yells at me and she makes a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And she said, well, is she doing like ba, 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 or da, da, da? And I'm like, no. And she's like, okay. And she just said, mm-hmm. And I just sat there and I'm like, the fuck do you mean? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like,
so I get home and I told Kev and Kev was like, so is she delayed? And I'm like, no, but I knew exactly what he was saying because the moment the doctor said that to me, I'm like, fuck. And then I said to Kev afterwards and I was like, well, at least we know if she has the same, it's genetic.
Right.
But I was like, at least it's genetic then. But right there, me saying that, it immediately took the blame off of me.
Yeah.
A little bit where I'm like, okay, like,
right.
I don't know.
Well, one thing that like not the hardest, but one of the biggest things that I struggle with all of this is that when we're talking about, my daughter has a lot of like, quote, bad habits, unquote. And when we're going through these evaluation processes and they're asking things like, because with my daughter, there's a question of if she's on the autism spectrum. We're not sure. She's been evaluated. They also said they weren't sure. She has another follow-up in December after she's in preschool for a few weeks. So a lot of the questions that they ask are geared towards the autism spectrum. And I'm definitely not an expert in that at all. But some of the questions that are asked, I I struggle with, because I don't understand why those things are a bad thing. So
Yeah.
for example, like, does she line up her toys? Does she like, like repetitive things? Does she say things? And that's where I'm pretty type A, but I got a little bit of crunch in me, just a little.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is so wrong about that? And those are the situations where I feel like I'm putting her into a box, and like we're trying to suppress her and have her not just be her creative, beautiful self.
Yeah.
And that's what I had said to my husband was, what if she has, obviously my love is blinding, it's fine, but what if she has this unbelievable mind that we're just like, nope, stop, don't do that.
Yeah.
And we're trying to train her on what the social norm of what a mind is, to an extent. Do I want her to be accepted in public settings? Absolutely. I want her to be able to grow, flourish, live on her own. But there's some situations where I feel like, am I really doing right by her right now?
Yeah.
So it's a tough one.
No, well, and I get that, because I remember during the pandemic, our speech therapy office closed down. So we went to go find a new one. And when we went to the evaluation, the speech therapist who had just met Cassidy, who was wearing full PPE at the time, was she met Cassidy, and Cassidy kind of freaked out. She freaked out. She didn't really want anything to do with her. She didn't want to sit down. You have to remember, she was only 2.5 or 2. And the woman looked at me after this 15-minute evaluation saying, I really recommend that you go and get her evaluated with a behavioral pediatrician or whatever for autism. And I remember calling Kevin crying on the way home. And I was like, I don't think that that's what's going on. Now, I'm not against it. Like, if she has autism, she has autism. She's the same exact kid. She just has autism, whatever. But I said, they're telling me that that's what they're going to try and put her in, like a box, because she won't sit in a fucking chair. I was like, that's insane to me. I said, until the point where it's detrimental, but I was like, at what point do we allow, like,
yep.
I don't know how to word it right, but like, I learn best through visual. Like for me, I learn best through visuals.
Yep.
Some people might learn best through reading. I don't know. Like, we have to tailor it a little bit.
Exactly. That's where, and even my father is an educator. He was an educator for, God, I don't even know how long. 30 years, let's call it. And when I was in first grade, they had said to him that they thought that I had ADHD. And no, this is back in like the 90s.
Yeah.
And my father was like, okay, fair enough. Why do you think that? And I'm sure you guys all see like the TikToks and the reels out there, like, hey, if your report card said like, doesn't stop talking in class, what do you do now?
Yeah.
I'm in sales now.
Yeah.
But that's what they were saying. Like, oh, well, she won't sit still in class. She is talkative. She's this, she's that. And he was just very plainly like, I'm not trying to withhold my daughter from anything, but she's a first grade girl.
Yeah.
Like, what do you expect? And we ended up, working. I still vividly remember this little like program that my dad developed for me. I think it was like a 3 or 4 week thing where I was simply sent home with an index card every day. And it either had a smiley face on it, a sad face on it, or like a just okay face on it. Yeah. And that was a representation of my day. And I had to show it to him. And if I had a smiley face, then I got to pick the show we were going to watch after dinner. And then all of a sudden, the concerns that they had for me were not there anymore. I mean, that's just one example, but that's where I'm kind of feeling is like, I even asked my father, I said, how did you know that your gut was right? He was like, I didn't. I didn't. I just, I'm a high functioning adult now. I live independently. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I have a steady job. I'm a homeowner, all the things. So when I have my dark days is, when I'm thinking about Giada's future. And I actually had a call with, her early intervention coordinator. And I said, I know you can't compare kids. I know you can't tell me about other kids, but like, I need you to give it to me straight here.
Yeah.
Are we looking at like long-term problems as an adult? Because that's what I'm picturing is like, she will never be able to live on her own. That's where I'm going. And she was like, she needs help right now. There's no question about it. Do I picture that she's going to be in like a group home as an adult and can't maintain a job? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm picturing, but we need to get her caught back up. She's a year to a year and a half behind. When she got evaluated with a behavioral pediatrician, like what you had gone through, that was April of 2022. So she was about 2.5. Yeah, she was like 2.5. And at that time, they had rated her speech at the level of a 9-month-old, which is nothing, you know?
Yeah.
So that was really eye-opening for me, to be like, okay, like, what do we need to do? Let's figure this out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Still in the thick of it, unfortunately. But what I will say that, we've all heard it. When other parents, whether it's the same generation or an older generation, when they say, oh, you just wait, you're going to wish that she didn't talk. I can't tell you how many times we were told that going through infertility. Oh, you just wait. You think it's, you think that you want all these kids. And I have never once thought to myself, man, I wish I didn't have kids. Same thing with crawling. Oh, you just wait until she crawls. You're going to wish she didn't. Never happened.
Yeah.
When she started walking, you just wait. You're going to wish she never walked. I have never been more happy that she could walk. I was actually more thrilled. Once she started walking, a lot of my anxiety went away, because when she couldn't walk, there was a big focus on, is there something bigger going on, something physical, neurological. And that was really scary.
Yeah.
Once she started walking, a lot of that anxiety fell off of me. And now I almost look at it like, I know she's going to talk eventually. You know what I mean? I don't want to minimize it, but once she could walk, that was huge for me to be like, okay, there's not something muscular potentially going on, genetic. So that was a little bit more scary, but I got to tell you, it is really interesting to absolutely fall in love with a child that really hasn't spoken any words, but this person so well, and they have never really talked before. Isn't it a wild feeling?
It is wild, because you get to see them in a different way. That's probably why you want to fight for them. Like, that goes to show, like, parenting at its heart. Like, that is the true definition of like parenting, is like, that's the love right there of, you don't really, I mean, even if they did talk, how much do you really know your 3-year-old? Like, at the end of the day, it's still 3. You've only known them for 3 years, and maybe one of those years they've been talking a little bit, but it's like me with Haley, or you with Cole, like our little ones right now. Our kids, by the way, are 9 days apart, but
wild, absolutely wild.
But like, I know Haley, I know her personality, Cole, their personality. It's just like, it's funny how you get to fall in love with these kids. But
yeah,
Carly, what would you say your biggest advice is for someone who is on the fence, or like has a gut feeling, or just has a doubt, or wants to get their kids tested but is too afraid to, or any of that?
I would say my biggest piece of advice is to do it. And not even for the reason of getting your child evaluated, but one thing that I absolutely underestimated was how long this can take. So if you even have an inkling that your child has a developmental delay, I didn't realize that it took months to get on the calendar.
Well,
We
especially
were
with a behavioral pediatrician,
correct.
especially with the
Well,
autism thing, that's
yeah,
huge.
the behavioral pediatrician, I'll tell you exactly how we got the appointment. We have been on the waiting list for that pediatrician since December of 2020. Okay.
Yeah.
And when our early intervention speech therapist had said, I think that she should be evaluated for autism, I obviously freaked out. I obviously went down a, rabbit hole, and I called the behavioral pediatrician's office and said, I just asked about her placement, and they said that, given all of the other children, she's not at like the top of the list, which that's the other part too for me that's hard, is I don't want to try to take away from other kids that have higher needs. So, okay, fine. I asked for our pediatrician, our just regular pediatrician, to send over an updated referral. But now at this point that this is happening, it's April of 2022. So a year and a half after starting being on, almost a year and a half of being on that wait list. I said, could you please send over an updated referral just so that it more of the concerns are listed, because that referral from before is so old. So that was on a Friday. I called on a Monday to see, hey, did you receive this updated referral? And the woman on the phone says, yep, we received it. And actually we have an opening tomorrow. Do you want to come? I was like, what? I literally started crying on the phone. I was like, yep, I literally don't even care what time it is, as long as it's okay that I can bring my son, because some doctors' offices are still not allowing for other children for COVID reasons. And they were like, nope, that's absolutely fine. And we were there. And when I talked with the doctor, I was like, yeah, we just got on your schedule, kind of by chance. And she had said, she's like, I wish that there was a better system. There was obviously a cancellation and you were able to get fit in. And we don't have a system for calling people. And I said, really? I was told that the wait list was evaluated every single morning. And anytime that there was an opening, they called who was highest on the list. And she said, yeah, that does happen. But ultimately, parents end up needing to push. And that's just not in my nature to be that pushy person with things like this. And so that was hard for me. And I know a lot of moms locally do try to push for certain diagnoses for their kids so that they can get more services. And that's just not in my nature either. She ultimately did receive a diagnosis of global developmental delay or disorder, which is just a fancy way of saying she's not hitting her milestones.
Yeah.
That would be my biggest piece of advice for anybody, is don't underestimate how long this actually does take. So if you're even thinking about it and you want to try to make an appointment, realistically, depending on the state you're in and the services that you receive and the necessity of the need for your child, it could take over a year. It could take 6 months. It could take 2 months. It could take a day.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there are a lot of children out there, and there's that need help, and there's only so many providers.
Well, and my big thing too is you don't have to. I don't know how. I think it works state to state. From whenever I've shared, I think most people have always told me it works the same way in every state. You don't need your pediatrician's approval to do this stuff. So if you feel like your child, so this is what happened with Cassidy, is I knew something was up, and I brought it up to my pediatrician. She had told me, she was like, you know what, just wait, because some kids overnight will just start talking. And she said, it will just happen. And she said, let's give it till 2 and see what happens. And as we were nearing, I think she was like 23 months, like just about to be 2, I knew nothing was changing. It was still the same. So I called the early intervention. You can call your state and then you can get the early intervention. So I called them and set it up myself and did all of that myself. And you can do that. You can do all of this yourself. And just as Carly was saying with, her doctor's office saying you should, it's almost a thing that you have to call daily and ask the questions. And what I've learned recently with Cassidy, thankfully it wasn't hard getting her into this public elementary school program, this IEP. program was, and what I had learned from people and like when we were kind of like before we knew she was getting accepted, people were telling me if she doesn't get accepted, you can hire an advocate. You can hire a third party advocate to come and they will be able to be the ones to push. So if you're not comfortable with that, or if you don't know what you're talking about or feel confident in any of that, you can hire someone, or I don't even know if you hire them. I think it might be free.
Yeah. Well, that's my other like topic, which may be for another day, but there's many people out there that don't have that, and don't have resources to be able to pay for things like that. And that's really, heartbreaking. And I'm classified as a middle-class Caucasian woman, and I have a full-time job and a lot of flexibility with my schedule. And even I'm struggling. So I can't imagine somebody that's in much different circumstances than me. And, another day, but it's hard when you have to hear about, what it feels like. Maybe this is a terrible analogy, but I feel like it's like the old school Black Friday shopping when everybody's in line, everybody's pushing, everybody wants the same thing. And you just want to get everybody out of the way to get what your goal is. And it's a lot, right? Because you want to be an advocate for your child, but it's also like for your own mental health, you're like, I can't keep fighting. It's a lot. So that would be in a synopsis, my piece of advice is just to, and then to add on to that, when you get to the point of making an appointment and getting in, do not sugarcoat your concerns. I did that. I was at a stage of maybe denial. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh no, she might do that.
It's not denial. It's probably denial, but it's also, I think it's pride.
Mm-hmm.
It's pride, because you almost don't want to own up because you almost feel, I don't think they don't want to make you feel bad. I don't think they're trying to, but like, they're like, well, how many words do they have? And you're like, I don't know. But then you feel bad that you don't know. And you're like, oh shit, should I be paying attention to this? Or how much, I mean, I'm making it up. I don't even think they asked me that, but there's things where you're like, do you do this with her? And I'm like, no, like, no, I didn't know I needed to. Like, you just automatically sit there and you're doubting yourself. You're going to doubt yourself in all of this shit. You're going to. So, and that's a big reason why you're probably going to want to avoid doing this. So if you're on the fence and you're like, oh, I don't know if my child, I feel like something's up, but I don't know if you can own up enough to yourself right now, listening, knowing that you're pushing this off because of a pride issue. I get it, but you're going to move it on, take that pride and do it as a proud mom who's going to fucking fight for her kid instead, because it had nothing to do with you. It had nothing to do with you. Honestly, unless you literally locked your child in a room,
then we're coming after you.
then you did something.
Right.
But even at the end of the day, if you were in survival mode, because, we could cast blame in so many other ways. Like, again, unless you shoved your child into a dark room and you didn't give them any socialization at all, then you're fine. Like, even if you put them in front of a TV, even if you put them in front of a tablet, even if who the fuck knows? You did great. You did great with what you were given. And now,
and whatever that is, for some of us, that was trying to navigate a pandemic. For others, it's, I'm trying to keep a roof over my head and work. And because of that, I can't focus on my kids. Or maybe it's, I'm struggling with my own mental health. So how the heck am I supposed to figure out, different words and signs and this and that, when I'm just trying to keep my own head above water.
Yeah. Or if you have multiple kids, like, and talking to your kid, like, I don't sit and read books to my kids every night.
No.
Time. So, like, that's another thing. You're going to sit and you're going to be like, oh, did I not read to them enough? Like, any of that shit. You're going to question every single bit, and none of it has anything to do with you. None of it.
Nope.
It's just, it is what it is. They go at their own pace. And I think that's a big thing that I learned too, is like I'm glad that there's milestones so we could get ahead of things, but I also try and not pay much attention to them, because from what I've learned is like, especially my kids, I think all kids do this, but every kid does their own shit at their own pace. It's just, some kids learn to ride a bike at 2, and some kids learn to ride a bike at, I don't know, 10. So
yeah. Yep. Every kid's different. It's hard to compare, but everyone's doing the best we can, right? No one's intentionally trying to, cast blame on why, your child is or isn't doing something. And, we're all just trying to do our best and get to the end goal of happy, healthy, safe kids. At the end of the day, that's all we all care about.
Agreed. Well, we are going to wrap this up. So Carly, tell everyone where they can find you.
I am on Instagram. My handle is Carly Esperia. So that's CarlyEsperia. That is my first and middle name. And on my page, I like to talk about self-care, taking time for yourself. I am a working mom of 2. And I got to find some time to take care of myself, because you can't do that, do everything else without that. So if you want to follow me, head on over there.
Yeah. And I'll tag everything in like the notes for the episode. If you guys want to find her, you can head on over there.
Thank you all for listening.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. And again, our DMs are always open. If you want to just talk, vent, or comment on this podcast, if you are in a similar experience, but just like everything, you're not alone in it, and it's hard as fuck, but you're harder. Our parenting is hard. We're going to parent the shit out of this stuff. And if your kid's in the same boat, it's okay. It's okay. They're great kids.
Cheers to that.
Another episode down and way more to go. But thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to help support this podcast, I would love for you to subscribe. I'd love for you to share it with others and post about it on your own social media, or leave a rating and review. I cannot tell you how helpful and how appreciated those things are for me. Of course, to catch all the latest from me, you can follow me over on Instagram at The Very Merry Life, over on TikTok, The Very Merry Life. And even if you wanted to check out my monthly newsletter, you can do so by subscribing over at theverymerrylife.com. I'll see you next week. Stay tuned for more honest, raw, real chit chat. I have some amazing moms lined up coming on, and shit's going to get fun. So buckle up, Buttercup. It's going to be good.